Hey everyone, welcome back again. Man, I'm really spoiling you guys this week, huh? 5 uploads. Anyway, today we'll be going over these little guys. Specifically, they are called Everglide Jade Green V2s. Now, these are a tactile switch, and they are supposed to mimic Zelios V1 switches. Now, the biggest problem with this review, and I will say it up front right now, despite looking for months on months on months, I have not been able to secure any Zelios V1s. And it's a damn shame because I actually really wanted the Zeal V1s to compare to this review, but supposedly everyone just apparently wants to grab them for their collection or something, because I can't find a single fucking person that can sell these at a reasonable price. And the one person that I did try to contact, someone got to him first, and he got him first. So all I got was an apology letter saying that they're not available anymore. However, I still think that this is still comparable to a few switches, one in particular that many people may have. And I think it serves a very niche purpose or a niche community of tactile enthusiasts, because I think Everglide Jade Green V2s are for the people that want to inch their way above their standard Cherry MX Brown, but aren't willing to go through the tactility levels of, say, Holy Pandas, T1s, Zeo V2s, Oreos, yada 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 yada. Now, before we get into anything at all, I just want to get this out of the way first. If you thought that JWKs needed films, you'd be very, very surprised to find that Everglide Jade V2s, you're going to want to film these and lube these in order to make these sound any possible way on a scale of decency. Now, what I meant by that word garbage is that if you don't film and lube your Everglide Jade V2s, you're probably better off just not having the switch at all. Because here's what they sound like on a switch tester by themselves. And this is obviously lubed and filmed, and this is just stock right out of the bag. Listen to the subtleties, or rather the lack thereof. Yeah, holy shit. These things do not fuck around when it comes to rattliness. If you want your Everglide Jade V2s, or any Everglide Switch rather, I think these are exclusive to the Tactiles, because listen to these. These are tourmaline blues that are just pro versions that just are lubed. They don't rattle much at all. Same with this one. So, I don't know what it is with the Tactiles, but my goodness, listen to that guy. It's worse when you even put a keycap on it. Here are some old WASD keycaps. I'm going to put the Z on the stock Everglide and the X on the filmed one, and listen to this. Yeah, like, holy shit. You better be filming and lubing these things. And I think Walker Keyboard Science actually put a video on how they made his switches sound good, and he did exactly this. Because before, he gave these things a really bad review, and I can see why. These things require modding. My goodness. But of course, if you saw the timestamp on screen, I suppose it's better if you have skipped this entire section because you're here to compare the tactilities to other tactile switches, correct? Now, the reason why I wasn't able to procure ZLV1s is not only because of the fact that people seem to be eating them, but because they're also pretty damn expensive and people are selling them in like bulks of 100, where I just can't see myself experimenting with switches that I don't know much about and using $100 to buy 100 of them, if not more. However, in my entire switch collection, there are some comparable switches, and I think that I have a good idea as to how I can compare these. Now, instead of using the stock Everglide Jade Green V2, I will be using the lube and film one because all of the other switches that I can compare them to can be compared via their fullest potentials. So over here, I have a lubed Cherry MX Brown, and of course over here I also have an Ergo Clear. Ergo Clears, of course, you should probably know by now, these are Cherry MX Clears, but they have lighter springs in them, making them easier to press. And here is a Cherry MX Brown that has been lubed with Krytox 205 Grade 0. And I think that the Everglide Jade V2, or Jade Green V2, falls in the middle of these two switches. Now, what I mean by falls in between is that the tactility, rather, in these switches are just a hint more pronounced, if not a little bit more clean compared to a Cherry MX Brown, but they won't ricochet your fingers back as strongly as, say, the Ergo Clear, because these by no means are that tactile at all. As a matter of fact, when I first got them, I was like, what the hell's the difference? Until I compared them on camera. So here I am, comparing it for you, or recreating this scene, recreating my experiment. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here doing this video, would I? So, let's take a look at Cherry MX Browns first. Let's take a look at the travel. So you have a lot of pre-travel here, and the bump is like right here. Travel, bump, travel. And when I press fast, it ends up being like a hitch on a linear, if you know what I mean. So you know they're tactile because they're not smooth, but when you press fast enough, you can't help but feel that there's something to be desired. Now with the Ergo Clears, on the other hand, clearly there is a bit more tactility here, a little bit less pre-travel, and you can see this bump is really pushing my finger back. I'm just letting my strength gradually out of my hands, and you can tell that this thing really has some push to it. It's got a pretty tactile leaf in there, and the stem helps as well too. And when I press down, there's a very clear hitch that isn't just sort of like an afterthought, but it's genuine tactility. Of course, Kyrus122 would still be bitching about it, of how he thinks it's a hack job or whatever, but that's not my place to say. And here is the Everglide Jade Green V2, and you can tell that there's a little bit of pre-travel there, and the bump is actually like kind of round here. And of course, let's study this again. Pre-travel, bump, finish travel. And when I press down on this, oh, this is a stock one, never mind, sorry. Here we go. Travel, bump, travel. And when I press down on it very fast, it's not only smoother than a Cherry MX Brown, but I still feel like it's a bigger hitch in the tactility or the movement of the switch compared to the Cherry MX Brown. So let me compare this side by side and just make sure I'm not talking on my ass. So I'm just like slamming on it. If I slam on it, it's almost as if the extra tactility that's supposed to be part of this brown switch adds to the weight or whatever. Versus the Everglide Jade Green V2, if I press super hard, it's a hint more tactile in there, where it's not only smoother, but in other words, it's arguably more tactile. Now, that may be the end of this comparison, but I personally think the perfect balance is actually part of Everglide's own lineup. It's actually their crystal purple. Crystal purples are basically like, I'd say, the perfect middle ground for me. because as I continue to experiment with extra Everglide switches, the new batch, unfortunately, with their bamboo green, the travel was a little bit too small, so you can see how the stem sticks out quite a lot. And I don't like that in tactile switches anymore, at least. I outgrew that feel. But with the crystal purples, which is right here, you can see that this thing has a full travel, and it has a really round bump. It's not anything like, say, a Zelios, or like an Oreo, rather, because that Oreo is super tactile. But the Everglide crystal purples are like my favorite type of tactility, because it's not as sudden as a T1, nor is it as round as a Holy Panda, but it's right in the middle ground where it's clearly not Cherry X Brown, but it's also clearly not a Holy Panda. So that's my thought on it, but otherwise I think that will cover it. That is my take on the Everglide Jade Green V2s, and I hope this serves as, well, adequate information to help you make your next purchase decision, because let's face it, none of these things are cheap. If you want to get your hands on Everglides or just browse the Everglide catalog, unfortunately I still haven't found any store in Conus that actually sells them, like, nationally, at least to us Americans. The only distributors that I know that stock these are Everglide themselves on Taobao, and also KP Republic, albeit their Switch lineup for the Everglides don't include everything that's up to date so far. However, if that's all I have, I'll link everything in the description that I think is helpful, and I hope this will be, again, of use to you. Because I know that some people do appreciate Cherry Mixed Browns and their respective counterparts, but maybe they liked a little bit of more tactility. Like a smidge, you know. So, yeah.